Animals cannot sweat, and eventually they'll just expire. And now there's some people still do that at the Tarahumara, and a certain small African group of indigenous people still have persistence hunting. But that's what our people did. So can you imagine if all of us here hadn't eaten in days, and we're depending on these three guys here to go out, and, or maybe these two guys, to go out and get something to eat, and all they had was a little strategy to run, to keep this animal running, keep them running. Because we didn't have horses till the Spanish brought them over later on, but back then that's all you had. You just had to use your wits. And so there was great gratitude for this animal who sacrificed itself. Because there's no way, I've seen you and you've seen me, where sometimes it's difficult to put an animal down with just one or two shots of these powerful weapons. So it wouldn't have been easy to bring them down back then either. So I'm convinced that they wanted to sacrifice themselves to give us life. And that's a connection we have, and Hugh respects that, and that's why I have a great connection with you, and with all Spanish people now, thanks to
Okay, so here we have the whole picture. We have the cowboy, we have the Indian, we have the conquistador. Okay. So we need the buffalo, but I couldn't make it. So we'll take questions here if anybody has any questions, okay? Could be about the buffalo, could be about Texas, could be about Spain, could be about, yeah?
I have a question. Could you define or explain to us what to breed an animal with respect means?
What does it mean?
Okay, you hold your own microphone because I'm losing my arm.
It's okay. I don't want you to lose your arm. There are two things that I do that are out of the normal livestock raising, or I guess really three things I do. I don't wean, therefore I keep the family unit intact. That's respect number one. Number two is at the time of harvesting the animal, I shoot them myself. We have a Texas Department of Health meat inspector who does an ante-mortem and a post-mortem on each animal. Therefore, you don't have to transport the animal, so there's no fear involved. The animal is around all of the other animals that they've grown up with, and so they're calm. And that makes a tremendous difference in quality and the flavor of the meat, because there's no fear. So there's no cortisol that's racing through that bloodstream that gets converted into sugars that makes meat tainted sometimes, and it's fear. So that's really the respectful part, and probably the most important is there's no feedlot. The animals are never put on grain, which they were not meant to eat, just with grass. So that's, when I say respect, that's the foundation of it's more in keeping with the nature of the animal rather than trying to turn it into a completely economic unit. If that answers your question.
Can you do that with cows?
Yeah, you can. You certainly can. They're programmed genetically to do the same, because bison and cattle are in the same genus, Bovidae, and so yes, you could, but it's sort of been bred out of them over the years. So it's, and a bison's brain, I found out 2 days ago, is 1/3 larger than a cow's. So they are very intelligent animals.
Is bison and buffalo the same animal?
Yes, yes, they're one and the same. It's the North American bison or the North American buffalo. When you say the word buffalo, it usually means Asiatic. It means either Cape buffalo or water buffalo. What happened was when Saul got here, he knew boof, and so he named it the boof, and it's not, it's a bison. But that's the confusion.
Una pregunta por aquí. Yeah, go ahead.
your being Native American puts the whole question of immigration into perspective. I was wondering, in Puerto Rico, that everyone thought that the Taíno culture had been decimated and that there were no more traces of it. And then about 10 years ago, they got a grant to draw massive amounts of DNA from the population, and lo and behold, they found out that a significant portion of Puerto Rico does have Taíno blood. So I was wondering if either you or any of the academics here know if there are any grants out there to do the same in San Antonio, because I think that would be quite interesting to find out.
I agree with you, and no, I don't know of any grants. I think it's a very, very worthy effort. The program that my wife and I are involved with is Ancestry.com, and so they have this system whereby you can, anybody in this room can have their DNA done, and then if they happen to match some of my ancestors, the further back you go, back in the 1500s, I had royalty, believe it or not, French and German. Oh, serious. I don't like to throw that around. But anyway, what this system does, it'll connect us, and then they can contact me, or I can contact them, and they'll tell you exactly. Like there was a queen in my line, and she was like Cher. She only had one name. What is it?
Was it the Aruca or something?
Urraca.
No,
just Urraca. It's beautiful, beautiful. And she ended up giving up her throne to start an order of nuns, by the way. But anyway, no, that's a wonderful idea, and I'll see if I can get anybody interested in that, because for sure, some of the folks who had come back to me are either Iberian with 30-40% Native American and then other European, or they're more Native American and Iberian, but it's just a percentage. And there's so many showing up. The more people take the DNA, the more of them pop up and they start connecting with you and they want to know about it. We have our own spiritual church, Rio Grande Native American Church, and to add to the answer that was provided about the respect, Hugh also honored me by allowing me to pray and provide a spiritual journey prayer for the animals, because we believe that the animals have spirits, and if we do things right, they'll join our ancestors. So I would let my dad know, hey, here's another 5 animals coming to us, and so we believe that. And so he allowed us to do that, and so that was part of the respect, and now he continues showing a form of prayer also when he harvests these animals. So that's part of the respect also. I hope you don't mind me saying that. But no, I love that idea. I know that even in France now, there's a lot of folks showing up with a degree of Cro-Magnon man? Yeah. Or Neanderthal.
Cro-Magnon, in France it's Cro-Magnon.
Yeah. And they never thought that they ever interface with modern man, but that they carry that. Yeah. So I love that. I'm gonna float it.
Okay. Mr. Royal.
Work that in.
I was listening to a radio talk the other day, and they were talking about, when you're talking about being, respectful for the animal. And the person who was asking, he said that a lot of times the indigenous Indians of North America were actually stampeding the buffaloes into the ravine so they would kill themselves.
Right.
So there is the respect, but at the same time, they have to eat and they have to stampede and kill themselves.
Yes, and needles. I mean, you can go out to West Texas. There's a shelter called Bonfire Shelter that's been excavated, and there are hundreds and thousands of bones at the bottom of that shelter, and that's because it was effective. But think we impose perhaps a judgment on it that is a bit skewed. It doesn't mean that they weren't respectful, it means that it was effective.
And reality.
Yeah,
And that's the reality.
yeah, that's the
Well, and
reality.
there's also, here in Texas, Hugh, you might help me out, where they have discovered, back when there was still mammoths in this part of the country, there's an altar with this huge, giant bison head.
Oh, right.
It's
right.
in-
Oh, it's in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah,
The-
yeah.
And so even the early primitive man had built an altar to the giant bison. And so, and I can't speak for all American Indians, but the ones I know throughout Indian country, because I do a lot of volunteer work with USDA and I visit the Buffalo tribes, and Hugh and I also did a lot of work with bison tribes. It's like, I know that you've given yourself to me pretty much, you know, and you've been doing it before the horse, before the weapons, and there's no way that I could have taken you. You're too strong, too powerful, too smart, too fast. So you had to give yourself to me, and I thank you for that. It's that kind of respect. It doesn't mean that we weren't going to harvest you, but along the same lines, that we wouldn't waste anything. Everything was used. Yeah. But that was kind of another component to it.
I'm going to ask you something. That stampeding though, Hugh, it was just a form of harvesting.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right,
Yeah, they weren't just stampeding and
Oh,
stampeding.
no.
No, they were eating.
Yeah.
Una pregunta, vamos a tener un par de preguntas más y nos vamos a tomar la Coca-Cola, que si no se le va el gas. Sí.
So, I would like to know how come, and this question is for you, Guillermo, changing the tone a little bit, sorry. How come you wrote a book for kids, and can you tell us a little bit about it? And also I would like to know if you can give us the primicia and say, what is your next plan with respect to your life or Spain, something like that?
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm actually here because I'm touring Texas, going and visiting several schools, because I wrote a book for children in Spain that actually the school system in Spain is using for the kids to read in school in 4th and 5th grade. And I guess there's many schools, mostly in Florida and Texas, but in other states that have bilingual programs or dual programs, or they teach Spanish. And they thought my book was a good material for the kids to read Spanish, because the book is supposed to be funny, so kids like it because they laugh instead of cry, but it helps a little bit, even though there's a little bit of crying in the book too. And then because I hooked the book with technology, I learned through my own kids that if you go to a birthday party today and you give a little kid a book, they look at you like, what's wrong with this weirdo? Who wants a book? So what I did is I used an app, cell app, that when you put the cell phone on top of the illustration of the book, they become videos, and there are songs that I created, and there's riddles, there's mysteries that the kids have to solve, there's different games. So hopefully the kids will like the characters doing that. You say, instead of saying, here's a book, say, hey, see, you like this song, can you sing this song? Hey, see, you can solve this mystery. Hey, look at this character, look at this riddle, can you do that? And then enjoying the characters, as I said before, the character is the most important thing. So instead of reading the book and then discussing about the book, let's introduce the characters, let them like the characters, and then because they like the characters, they will be willing even to read a book. So that's what the teachers like, because of all this visual material, they can use it in the blackboard, in the digital blackboard now in the schools. They can sing songs with the kids. They can solve mysteries with the kids, they can go and do riddles with the kids, they can play language with the kids, and then by the time the kids know the characters, they read the book, they really love it. So I'm doing that, and my next project is related to that, because since I created a lot of visual material for the book, it's a book who comes already with banda sonora, comes with music, comes with tricks, comes with a lot of image. The natural way was becoming a movie, a musical, the way Mary Poppins was. Mary Poppins was amazing. Hopefully mine will be good enough. But anyways, the idea is to do a movie where, suddenly the characters stop and sing. That's called a musical. And I'm fortunate because there's two main characters in the book. One is a little girl in a wheelchair, 11-year-old, who helped teach the kids about, the idea that I said about embracing diversity and tell them how to cope with people who function in a different way. And that's the ideal world is not that everybody is the same. That'd be a very boring world where everybody will say, So, but the ideal world for me is a world that everybody has the same opportunities. So that moved the whole thing from the charity to the justice. And that's a different level. It's very interesting to discuss in school. So anyways, that's it, the character. The other character is an old detective. And Ruedas, the girl in the wheelchair, is helping the detective. So doing the movie, Antonio Banderas had agreed to be the detective, the main character of the movie. So I'm working with Antonio Banderas now to put the whole production, together. And I'm writing the script, but we're going to shoot the movie. Probably a lot of the movie is going to be shot in Texas, because I believe in bilingual education. If I shoot a movie in Spain, it has to be in Spanish. If I shoot a movie in America, in New York, it has to be in English. But if you shoot a movie in Texas, it's still an American movie with a lot of Spanish. So I'm going to cheat the system. I'm going to put a lot of Spanish on the screen, and people are going to think it's an American production. So I love that, because that's the way Texas is. And I have a big excuse. I never thought about that when I started. I have 3 books in the collection, but from the very beginning, the girl in the book, her father is from Texas, and her mother is from Segovia, Spain. So she's bilingual. So English and Spanish play on that book too, back and forth. With the idea of teaching the kids that learning a language is more than knowing how to translate shoe and say zapato, when I love my father, here mi papá. Knowing 2 languages is knowing 2 cultures. It's understanding that there's 2 different ways of doing the same thing. And I was telling the kids in the school yesterday that in Spain, we don't have Santa Claus. Here you have Santa Claus, and the kids have to put a tray with a glass of milk and cookies, waiting for Santa Claus. In Spain, los Reyes Magos, the 3 wise men, and kids wait for the Reyes Magos with 3 shots of brandy and 3 cigars. It's a little different approach. So cigars versus cookies, brandy versus milk. Well, guess what? Who cares? The 25th in the morning, kids in America and kids in Spain, they open the present with a big smile, mission accomplished. So there's 2 ways of getting to the same way. And when you know there's 2 ways of doing the same thing, then you know that there may be a 3rd way of doing things. So then you're willing to listen to somebody who's got a crazy idea just in case there's something good there. So that's the new project. The movie will be the new project, hopefully. It's a very difficult thing. It's involved a lot of people, a lot of money. So you never know if it's going to happen to the last minute. But I'm working hard on that. See, Agustin?
Like you had an impression about New York. Did you have a different impression about Texas?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't know anything about Texas. And I just was telling Ted, I came from the valley. I didn't even know the valley existed. I didn't know that you have palm trees in Texas. I didn't know you have a beautiful ocean in Texas. Who would have thought, So, yeah, I mean, you have to go to places, talk to people, and be open-minded to understand that things are much more interesting than you were expecting, So, yeah, Texas is a beautiful surprise. I mean, it's plenty of difference here. Austin is another thing. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
When you talk about diversity and you live in the north, you have good friends here in Texas. How do you feel, I don't know if it happens to you, when you go to Spain or when you talk to people in Spain and they say Americans are this, Americans are that, and you think there are a zillion types of Americans. How can you put them in the same box? Does this happen to you?
Well, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. One thing that is very difficult for anybody who's been living out of the country for a while is to go back to their own country. They always say how difficult it is to leave your people and move forward, and it's difficult. But you can get another life, you can get another friends, you can get used to another food, and if you don't like that food, you can always make tortilla at home. But the difficult part is when one day you decide to go back, because all those people that you left, they think you're exactly the same person who left. And they go back to the day that you say goodbye. And you say, no, wait a minute, I've been 20 years doing something different. Forget it, let's go, So you feel a little misplaced. You feel misplaced because you have so much things inside that you want to share and they don't even know what you're talking about. So that kind of a battle, I have it for years, but I completely surrender. You know, if you understand, fine. If you don't understand, big deal, you know, because that's not the story. But I have to tell you something. I mean, Spain, like many other countries, we have a stereotype of the United States, and it's normal. It's the empire. So what happened is, in a country like Spain, the United States is in the news all the time, it's in the music all the time, it's in the movies all the time, it's on the, you know, on the entertainment and whatever. But, so because the United States is there all the time, we've assumed that we know everything about the United States, but we only get in the headlines, you know. We're getting the best, okay, Tom Hanks is a great actor, he got the Oscar, yeah, that's great, kind of American is good. But then we get like everybody's obese and had a rifle and shoot the teacher as soon as possible. So, but in between, the daily life, what do they do? How do they do the networking? How they help each other? All that, we don't get it. And we don't get it for a funny reason, because I have to tell you something. I think movies, American movies, have a lot of information about daily life in America. But because they're movies, we say, oh, that's a movie, that's a reality. Like, I remember seeing a movie, I don't know if it was Fried Green Tomatoes or one of those, I don't know, but I remember seeing a bunch of ladies in a book club crying because a character, you know, something happened to the character. All those ladies were really crying, talking about the book. And I thought, ladies crying about a book? I mean, that's a movie. Then I went to New York, I saw a couple of book clubs, and I saw ladies crying about a character. It's like, oh my God, this is reality. So we don't get the reality of America because the sources of reality, we don't pay attention because we think it's fiction. And so, you know, but anytime somebody from Spain comes to this country, and Spain actually and the United States, America, have a funky relationship for many reasons. The whole thing started with you know, Spanish-American War. Cuba, that hurt a little bit. And Philippines, that was, you know, that was too bad. So, and after that, and then we have a dictator for years, and Eisenhower went there, and instead of saying, get out of here, he gave him a hug, that hurt too. And then the foreign policy, Latin America didn't help much either. So anyways, there's a lot of animosity there. So it's a love-hate relationship. But Spanish have a stereotype about the States, and most of the people in Spanish, you hear things like, oh, I don't want to go to the States, oh, I don't want to go there, oh, I don't have an interest. When the day they come here, they don't want to leave, they love it. And the good thing about the Spanish people here from Spain that I saw, is like in Spain we have to read a book called Don Quixote, okay, Man from La Mancha, but we read the book without paying a lot of attention, because there's two characters in the book. It's Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. So we only got the title of Don Quixote, who's the creativity, who's the genius, who's the guy who by himself does everything. So everybody in Spain wants to be a Quixote. Everybody knows his own idea. There's nothing called networking in Spain. Nobody helps anybody because I'm much least of it. So, you know, and a guy from a company in Corte Inglés will never consult with another company in BBVA. They'll come here and they'll do their own thing. And America is a little bit the other character. Is Sancho Panza, is the business plan. America is the business plan. Is that people will think about it. Actually, they will think too much. Like, you want to have dinner with somebody and you have to wait 2 months because of the agenda is complete. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about tonight. Can I show up? No, doesn't happen here. But anyways, so when a guy from Spain comes to this country and the creativity meet the business plan, normally thrives. So you see a lot of Spanish people here being very happy in this country because they find the support, the Sancho Panza that we don't find in Spain, because nobody said in Spain that Sancho Panza was crucial. Because Don Quixote with a Sancho Panza is the guy who was ironing the blouse, is the guy who was, you know, getting ready the donkey, is the guy who was cooking the meal for Don Quixote to go. I mean, with a Sancho Panza, Don Quixote would have never left home. So this country knows about that. And I think the mix between Spain and America, and the same thing with Americans over there, thrives. It's a relation that when it goes face to face, it really works. But in theory, we think we're really far away. And I think it's time out because Mr. Coca-Cola wants to serve right now. Gracias.